Vox Machina, Kith Kin by Marieke Nijkamp is a Critical Role novel set in the Campaign 1 universe, starring siblings Vex'ahlia and Vax'ildan, the characters portrayed by Laura Bailey and Liam O'Brien. We have a novel that expands their backstory before the events of Campaign 1. And this book wasn't great. I don't want to tell you why. There's no shortage of fantasy novels out there, which is part of the reason why I think this novel isn't great. It's very cookie cutter. Honestly, it's kind of like the bargain bin fantasy you'll find at Barnes & Noble, except this one's linked to Critical Role. What we have is a story about the siblings Vex'ahlia and Vax'ildan. Two have mostly been living out in the wilds and on the road and decide to go into town to get some supplies and get maybe a job for some coin. Vex, while shopping for books, runs into a noble who basically wants to go out on a date with her. She denies him, and they get into a little bit of a scuffle in the store, and he gets pretty pissed off and hires the Clasp to assassinate Vex. Later in that night, Vex goes out on a midnight stroll, and her brother Vax tails her just in case anything happens, and what happens? He intercepts an assassin. After interrogating this assassin, he makes his way back to his boss, the Clasp, and brokers a deal to steal a magical ring to save his sister's life. While traveling to make their way to get this ring, the siblings are attacked by zombie ashwalkers and are separated, each being taken in by different sides of a local faction that's warring against each other, both setting up the conflict of both sides being right and both siblings kind of going against each other. Peppered in are some flashback stories about the siblings as they grow up, first with their mother and later with their elven father. What plays out is a predictable story with predictable twists. I saw everything coming a mile away. Now, I think the problem is that this is just generic fantasy, and there are hundreds and thousands of great fantasy novels out there, and this one just doesn't live up to my time. I went with the audiobook because there was a deal for Audible, 3 months for $5 a month, something like that. Now, speaking about the audiobook itself, it's actually wonderful. It's narrated by Robbie Daymond, who's currently in Campaign 3 as a guest, and Liam and Laura reprise their roles as Vax and Vex, and it's great. It's a great performance. Especially Robbie, who does a lot of voices, and I actually think he'd be great at DMing a one-shot. I'd love to see that. The audiobook experience is actually pretty fantastic. It's just the story that falls way behind. There just really isn't any depth to anything in the book. There's barely any world building. Vex spends her time inside the gates of a town after the zombie Ashwalker attack, and to me, it just felt like she was in one room for all of the chapters that she's in. Found the flashback chapters to be kind of shoehorned in. It all just kind of felt like fan service to me. And I found it to be an odd decision to start the novel with the flashback of young Vex and Vax, because to me, there's no hook, especially in the first 2 chapters. Nothing really happens. There's no hook. And you need to have a hook within the first few sentences of a novel. Otherwise, you're not going to grab the reader's attention. Starting the novel out with the flashback of the siblings sort of doesn't make sense to me because it sets the novel up to be a young adult story about 2 siblings growing up as being half-elves. And you jump right into chapter 2 that's full of swearing and fighting with giant spiders, so Kith Kin just seems to be checking off boxes to make Critical Role fans happy. That's how I viewed it anyway. The prose is just boring. It takes a while to get going, and I will say that I did have my attention grabbed when the twins were separated, and the story that is set up is kind of cool, but it loses me after a few chapters. So much so that listening to the audiobook, I sped up the last 4 hours so I can just get through it and finish it, but the plot is just very predictable. There's barely a twist. You see everything coming. Each sibling is separated, and of course they're going to take the sides of the people that saved them. When they finally get back together, they have to kind of choose a side, and both seem good to them. But of course there's a twist, and I don't know, it's just not that great. Had it not been a Critical Role product, I would have given up after the first 2 chapters, because like I said, there's no hook. And those flashback chapters, other than having some parallels to the previous chapter, don't have to be there at all. It's just fan service. There isn't any character development by the end of the story. Yes, we find out the true intentions of one of the characters that have been interacting with the twins, but none of that adds to the further development of Vax or Vex. Honestly, the ending felt so disjointed with the decision made by Vax that Nijkamp seemed to have no idea how to wrap the story back up into the Critical Role lore. The relationship between Vax and Vex is an odd one at that. Both can't stop telling each other, themselves, or people they meet that nothing in the world is more important than their sibling. Yet, they're at odds with each other when they finally regroup near the end of the novel. And Vax lies to Vex about the reason that they are on the mission in the first place. the twins have no development either. Vax develops feelings for one of the characters for no other reason that I can see other than to remind readers that he's in fact bi. Now, someone who is a fan of Critical Role, but has not seen Campaign 1 yet, that kind of puts me in an odd place for this novel, I guess. I definitely don't think this is a good fantasy novel for someone that's not interested in Critical Role at all. If you're maybe a huge Campaign 1 fan, or Vex or Vax or some of your favorite characters, maybe check it out. There seems to be a decent amount of positive reviews around Audible and Amazon for people that are fans of Critical Role, but have you already watched everything that Critical Role has come out with? Every episode of every campaign and every one-shot? I think your time and money is better spent towards those. Especially money, because the episodes and the one-shots are free. This novel or audiobook just isn't a replacement for Critical Role at all. The reason why I love Critical Role so much is because it's a fantastic blend of epic storytelling, character development, and comedy. Kith Kin has none of that. There's no way I can personally recommend this book for $15 or $23 for the audiobook, whatever it is. Now, after I finished it, I did have the thought that this is an interesting marketing scheme for Critical Role in general. They have the animated series coming out soon, and putting out a novel that has ties to that series makes sense. And there are a bunch of Campaign 1 throwbacks in Campaign 3, so it all kind of goes together. So yeah, this is going to be a quick review. I don't really get too much out of Kith Kin to warrant deeper discussions. It's just a predictable run-of-the-mill fantasy novel, and it is what it is. So if you've read the novel, let me know what you think, and subscribe for way more Critical Role content on this channel. Until next time, see ya.